As of the day that I'm uploading this video, it has been exactly 15 years since the release of Linkin Park's impactful album Meteora. It was their sophomore effort, and I want to go through and talk about this track by track. It's an album that means so much to me personally. It was one of the very first albums that I was ever given, and it was one of the albums that got me into music. I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for the fact that I was able to meet the band and able to get it signed by every member. And I'm also just incredibly and eternally grateful for the fact that I got to meet and have a conversation with Chester Bennington. It was truly one of those moments that came full circle and impacted me in a very big way. Rest in peace, Chester. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet me, talk to me, and it means the world still. What's up everyone, John from ARTV. Sorry to open the video up on a little bit of a dark note, but of course I anticipated this being a much different review when I envisioned it a couple of years ago. I knew that I wanted to update my thoughts on Meteora because I initially gave a review of this album years ago, more so when I first started the channel, and while I do stand by my feelings, I don't feel like I was able to relay them in a strong way, so I wanted to give a redemption review and also a 15th anniversary reflection for this album. And like I said, I am going to go track by track through this. I will play a preview of each song before I talk about it. And of course, this is different. I said that because obviously I did not anticipate Chester Bennington taking his own life and this being a much different situation. I will always be grateful for the music of this, and I know that so many people were impacted by not only this album, but also Hybrid Theory in their early days, and obviously the continued works of Linkin Park as a whole. I really do hope that they soldier on as a band, and it sounds like Mike Shinoda has said that they are planning to, and I wouldn't expect anything less. They shouldn't have to stop just because Chester is gone. I hope they're able to make Chester proud, and I hope this review is able to make you guys feel some sort of pride as the Linkin Park community probably watching this video. I know there's a lot of fans out there, and I just want to say stay strong, celebrate the 15th anniversary of Meteora, blast this thing. It's still one of my favorite albums of all time, and you can hate all you want to and say this album is so cheesy, it's so angsty, it's so over the top. But at the same time, I think that if you think back hard enough, you will find that you have those albums that are so special to you and really helped you during some difficult teenage years or whatever the case may be. Anyways, please enjoy the video. Let's talk about the first track. I decided to combine the two opening tracks, Forward and Don't Stay, because Forward is so short, obviously. It's really just glass shattering and you breaking into the album. But for some reason, that always helped me really envision the album cover. It just seems like maybe some destruction is going on. Obviously, it looks like somebody's doing some spray painting, maybe some graffiti on the album cover. They're wearing the mask. I just envision that person on the cover, like breaking the glass and then it shattering straight through into Don't Stay. I know I've told this story plenty of times, but for any new viewers, I'll make it brief. This was one of the first albums that I was ever shown. I was raised on Christian and country music, and I really didn't start developing my own music taste until age 13. What a coincidence that this happened in March of 2005, exactly about 2 years after Meteora came out, but it was still insanely popular because this is the most popular album of all time and the most successful in terms of alternative song charts. It was something that scored 5 #1 singles, so this album was still all over the radio. My friends and I, they would skate together. He would actually throw this on his boombox, and we would skate around to this, and this was really my first experience. He had been given the boombox for his birthday. We started to listen to music while we skated, and I had no idea what all this new music was, and that's where I was shown the music of Linkin Park, The White Stripes, System of a Down, Green Day, Weezer, Queens of the Stone Age, and so many more. However, Linkin Park's Meteora was one of the first full album experiences I ever had, and I remember for the first time hearing that glass shattering on Forward and being so kind of enthralled and curious to see what was coming, and to hear those guitars kick in on Don't Stay, and the turntable scratches from Joe Hahn. Everything was a whole new world, and still listening to it, I feel euphoria, and I also feel redemption because this track really has a lot of angst built up in it, and the anger. I love Chester's voice here, and the backing instrumentation. It is obviously of the nu metal variety the majority of the time on this record, and this track as well. That's what most people would consider it, but I love the way that they're able to blend rap, rock, nu metal, and obviously the DJ element as well. Don't Stay is fantastic, and I still love the chorus on this one to this day. It's one of my favorite Linkin Park songs.
I had nothing to say, and I'd get lost in the nothingness inside of me. I was confused, and I let it all out to find that I'm not the only person with these things in mind.
Somewhere I Belong has such a great, delicate guitar on it. I love the way that it opens up, and it truly does give you the feeling of disillusionment, and I think that looking back now on Chester's life, I understand so much more of where this songwriting came from. He came from an abusive household, and he also abused drugs to really get away from the pain and the ways that he was taken advantage of as he was a child, and it's something that's so sad as you learn about it, and you can actually feel in those words that he sings on Somewhere I Belong, I want to heal, I want to feel. And it's something where he's become literally, another track that we'll get to, so numb to the life around him that he just wants to experience love and happiness and the other feelings that come so easy seemingly to everybody else. This track in particular is the first one on the album that really introduces the idea of rapped verses and then sung choruses, and I think that the way that they interject Chester in there as well, playing off of Mike Shinoda, it's really fantastic, and he's able to put his life into the verse, and you can tell that they're just feeding off of each other. And seeing this one live, it was fantastic, especially looking back on videos of those early days. You can truly see the pain searing out, and as generic as it may have felt to some people, just know that the emotions that are there, they are real. And the intensity that builds up, especially just during the chorus of this track, it's truly fantastic. I still get mesmerized by a song like this because it makes me think back on the days that I just discovered this music, and I would watch the music video on Fuse, and I would somehow feel relief from that because I went through a lot of questioning during my teenage years, and I felt trapped and imprisoned, especially when I got into this album around ages 13 to 15, because I sadly had to move away from those friends that I talked about that I skated with. We moved to a new neighborhood, and there weren't really kids there. It was mainly like older people, and I went to a school that was a Christian school, and there weren't lots of people that really listened to the same sort of music, and I did feel very alone, but I guess we'll talk about that more on one of the coming tracks.
This isn't what I wanted to be. I never thought that what I said would have you running from me. Like this isn't what I wanted to be. I never thought that what I said would have you running from me.
What I love about Meteora is that it can get you all in the sad feels in a way and gets you feeling expressive, but then it gets you feeling angry again right after that, hence Lying From You. This one has such a great build to it. I love almost the little electronic build up before that slamming plethora of guitars. It's just a wall of noise that hits you, and you just want to like rage, start a mosh pit on your own or with friends. Wherever the hell you are, you're going to want to move to a song like this, especially once the screams kick in on the bridge and the way that Mike and Chester have that energy that are just fueling each other. It's a fantastic battle, and this still holds up so well in the Linkin Park discography.
1 minute you're on top, next you're not, watch you drop, making your heart stop, just before you hit the floor. 1 minute you're on top, next you're not, missed your shot.
Hit the Floor has this perfect balance between attack and restraint. It knows to play it coy during the verses, and Mike Shinoda has this bass backing him up. It's just really sly, the stuttered guitars that start off the song and then get loud during the chorus. And during the verses here, Mike is talking about all of these people around him that are just, so afraid to maybe be offended. He feels like he's walking on eggshells all day long, and all he knows that all he wants is to feel like he's not stepped on. This track has so many great rhymes on it, and call him a cheesy MC all you want, but honestly, I think he's really commanding behind a microphone, and his verses might not be the most creative thing in the world, but at the same time, I think that they meant a lot to a lot of people, and I know that a song like this impacted me. And I felt a lot of kind of tension release during the chorus, and I still do. And Chester's screams, it puts him at the top of the game. Honestly, the man had such a good voice in terms of not only singing, but also screaming. He can go from singing something like Numb to just changing it up to something like Hit the Floor, just like that. He's able to turn on this anger, and it's actually coming from a genuine place. And I have a funny story with this track, Hit the Floor. I was actually riding around with my friend. I guess I would call him my friend, not really. Like somebody that would always ask me to hang out. And this girl that I was dating at the time, I think I was around 16 years old, he just kept asking us to hang out. So we finally agreed to do it and make him happy. And he's taking us out on the highway and he's like, oh, I'm going to take you to this cool place. And in the process, he's blasting Linkin Park's Meteora. And that's fine and all, but this kid is kind of a show off. And so he's like changing lanes really fast. He just got his license and he's just really kind of overcompensating for a lot of things. He wasn't exactly the cool kid in class and he was really stoked that we were hanging out with him. And so he's like whipping the car around on the highway, and I remember Hit the Floor comes on and like every like little stuttered guitar thing, he's like changing it up, and we're like in the back seat and we're freaking out, and I look over to her and I'm like, oh my god, are we going to die? Is this how we're going to die? Easier to Run is a very influential song and a very unique one to this album. It has a slow, brooding atmosphere that builds up in that first part, and I think that Joe Hahn really deserves credit there, as well as Brad Delson, because he does a really nice thing with that delicate guitar in the intro. And while the guitars on this record obviously aren't anything that are super intricate the majority of the time, there's just a lot of chugging, a lot of loud riffs, I still think it sounds great, but I'm just saying it's not super technical the majority of the time. I think that the intro and Easier to Run in general has some really cool things done to it, and it's able to kind of lift slowly into the song before Chester belts out It's Easier to Run. I think this track really dives into the psyche of Chester Bennington. It's something where he talks about how it's easier to run from the things that he's afraid of, in his past even, instead of confronting it head on. And he's able to really do this a lot of the time because he doesn't want to feel the guilt. He doesn't want to feel the pain again. Just washing it aside. He doesn't exactly know where to put it. It's so much easier than shame and the guilt and everything else that builds up within him. And this one doesn't exactly have the answers. As many of these tracks do, they ask a lot of questions and they feel a lot of things, but they're not even able to answer them for themselves. And that's why I feel like it connected with so many people and still finds a home for young kids' hearts years later. 15 years later to be specific.
A little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard, handful of complaints, but I can't help the fact that everyone can see these scars. What I want you to want, what I want you to feel.
2, 1, go. I am. A little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard, handful of complaints, but I can't help the fact that everyone can see these scars. I am what I want you to want, what I want you to feel, but it's like no matter what I do, I can't convince you to just believe this is real, so fine, let go, watching you, turn you back like you always do, face away and pretend that I'm not, but I'll be here because you're all that I got. I feel like I already did that in a live stream or a video previously, so if I did, please forgive my cringiness, but that is one that I learned. I made it a point to learn very early on. I still love that rap and I get fired up by it, and once that chorus rolls around, it's something where Chester just knocks it out of the damn ballpark. This song in general is just, I feel like a lot of people's anthem and still can be a go-to, like get me fired up type track. I could see myself really just running to this track. I know I have in the past, and I think that it's a good workout song. Not that I do a ton of working out, but hey, if I start, which I'm planning to, then this'll be a go-to.
And now you become a part of me. You'll always be right here. You become a part of me. You'll always be my fear.
Figure .09 is the perfect skating song. Let me tell you, this was the perfect one to cruise around the neighborhood and look cool to, especially when you had to carry the boombox that was full of deep batteries around with you. Here we have actually one of the best songs on the record because it's able to combine so many elements and so many things that Linkin Park do so well. Obviously, you have Chester Bennington, but also Mike Shinoda, Brad Delson, Phoenix, Joe Hahn. Everybody is coming together, and I think that the drums on this track are kind of underrated as well. I know I give a lot of love to other aspects of the band, particularly the vocals and the rapping, but the instrumentation on a track like this is really able to go from a little bit softer, a little bit hazier, some really clean but heavy riffs during the verses, and then it's able to get so heavy and also, I would say, a little bit more technical and skilled on a track like this, especially during the breakdown. It's able to just take a song that has an uber catchy chorus, but then pump out something so anthemic and angry during the breakdown here, and I think that it's one of Chester's best moments vocally, at least in terms of screaming on the entire LP.
I don't know what's worth fighting for, or why I have to scream. I don't know why I instigate and say what I don't mean.
We've arrived at a moment that's actually very hard for me to talk about, so if I do get a little bit emotional, I'm going to try my best not to, then please forgive me. Breaking the Habit is a very sad song, even removed from Chester's death. Before that, it would still really strike a chord with me because I think back to the days when I truly was kind of depressed, where I didn't know where to turn. Like I talked about before, I was at a school surrounded by people that didn't get into stuff like this, and I felt like an outcast and an outsider. That's why I hung out with kids a couple of years older than me a lot of the time, just because I didn't really know how to relate to a lot of people in my class, at least in terms of like music taste and that sort of thing, so I would turn to those who did. And Breaking the Habit is a song that I obviously had discovered previously when I was out skating and that sort of thing. A track like this would come on, and it threw me off because I listened and paid attention to the lyrics. And I remember going home after hearing that CD a couple of times the first day. I remember going home and just kind of humming the song to myself because I had already picked up on some of the melodies and the lyrics. And after I actually had my friend burn me a copy of the CD, I remember after we had moved, probably about a year after, I was still listening to the CD all the time. I remember just getting in the shower one night and just singing along to this at like the top of my lungs. My parents weren't home, and I just was at like the end of my rope, essentially. I didn't know what to do, and I was feeling extremely down. And while I've never really seriously considered harming myself in some way, I think that that was the lowest that I had ever been, and that was the closest that I had ever come to doing something to myself. And this CD, honestly, I don't want to be over dramatic here, but this CD honestly helped me. It helped me cope, and it removed me from that situation because, as cheesy as it sounds, it made me feel not alone. And Breaking the Habit was one of those songs. It's so beautifully sung and composed. I love everything about it, from the keys on this track, the synthesizer, the electronic programming, the fast, rapid guitar that kind of juts throughout the verses and choruses. This track is essential listening and still one of my favorite songs ever.
Take everything from the inside and throw it all away, 'cause I swear for the last time.
From the Inside once again releases a lot of built-up anger and frustration. There's a lot in there where Chester Bennington was just fueled by his past. Take everything from the inside and throw it all away. This was actually the final single from Meteora, the 5th one to be specific, and the 5th one to top what was at the time the modern rock charts. It's something that I kept up with religiously. It's since evolved into the alternative songs charts, but like I said, it's the most successful album ever in terms of chart success on that because it scored 5 #1 hits. They released 5 singles and every single one went to #1. They were dominating the radio, they were dominating the world in general, and Meteora went on to sell over 7 million copies of the album. This track right here, From the Inside, was another one that I remember watching the music video for, and it was like a scene and a snapshot of war in the music video, and that's a really good correlation from what the lyrics are saying because you feel conflicted in internal warfare. And I think that the explosions and everything else going off in the music video were really a good way to portray that to the listener. And this is still a track that I connect with big time, and I think that it really is one of the best cuts here. I know I'm saying that about a lot of the songs, but honestly, this one stands tall.
Yo, peep the style and the kids checking for it. The #1 question is how could you ignore it? We drop right back in the cut over basement tracks with raps that got you backing us up like rewind that.
Variety is one thing that I think a lot of people criticize Linkin Park for, the lack of variety that is, but I honestly feel like Nobody's Listening is a great change of pace, not only on this album, but just in Linkin Park's discography in general. In fact, I don't think that they've ever replicated this track whatsoever. the beat is so unique and it almost feels like more of a hip-hop tune with some scratching and obviously the beat that's riding really the entire song, but there's also the guitars that are kind of cut in as well, and you feel a little bit of a heavy bass kind of trembling in the background, and the drums, not robotic, but still a little bit more in terms of like almost programmed drums, but it still has this fierce angle to it, and it's really Mike Shinoda's track to own. I think that he's extremely talented on this track, especially the way that he cuts these verses and is able to stick them in, and he calls so many people out without feeling like a dick, and that could be hard to do. I know this is an instrumental cut that's really just Joe Hahn and a little bit of the other members as well, but I wanted to talk about it by itself still because I feel it's very important. Session is a great track that really shows off the skills of the other band members. And a lot of bands might not take the chance to really just give their multi-instrumentalist the spotlight and say, okay, have an entire song, but Linkin Park, we're not afraid to do that. Here we have the track Session that's very scratch heavy, but also really takes you into a totally different vibe without differentiating and breaking away from Meteora all that much, at least in terms of stylistic and creative differences. This track as a whole is short, but it goes down very smooth, and it leads you perfectly into the final song, Numb.
I've become so numb, I can't feel you there. Become so tired, so much more aware. I'm becoming.
While I don't quite love Numb as much as I love Breaking the Habit, it's kind of similar and along those lines in terms of my experiences with it. I honestly did have a lot of feelings that related and connected to the message of Numb, and I know that so many people still love this song and name it as a go-to because it was immensely popular. It charted on the Billboard Hot 100 pretty high, and it was also just one of those songs that continued to get passed down from generation to generation. Little brothers, little sisters, everybody just showing the song to each other. And when Linkin Park played at the Hollywood Bowl, their first show without Chester, and that being the first song that they had, and that microphone stand being empty, and then the crowd comes in and they're just disillusioned because they don't know what to do. They expected somebody to be there filling the role of Chester, but in reality, nobody's able to fill those shoes, and I think that that's what the message of that just being empty was. And to hear the crowd singing along and carrying those impactful lyrics at the top of their lungs and just sounding glorious, it was truly a saddening and almost crying moment for me, but it was still something that made me feel proud to be a fan of the band. The song is still great. It might not have held up as well as a lot of the other songs here, but I would not rate it anything less than great. Wow, this video was long, but thank you so much for sticking around to the end. This is a very important album to me. I wouldn't normally go this long and go track by track like this, but here we are. This is a very important album, a life-changing album for me, and I had to give it the respect of just talking about it in depth like this. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make Chester proud. Guys, celebrate the 15th anniversary of this album. Whether you love it, you're okay with it, whatever, give it another spin. I will link it in the description down below. Please drop a like on this video, and thank you once again for watching. If you want to check out all of my Linkin Park themed videos that I've done, then tap this convenient playlist right here. Please go check it out. I've done a lot of videos, all of the reviews of all of their albums, that sort of thing. It's all linked in this playlist. If you want to see an individual Linkin Park video that I did every Linkin Park album ranked, then tap right here. If you want to connect with me on social media, all of these links that you see here can be found in the description down below. Other than that, make Chester proud, and I'll see you here very soon on ARTV.